What if the one thing millions of people do every single day, the one small act that quietly reminds them of a diagnosis they've been living with for years, was about to become something they only had to do once a week? For more than 1 million people in the United States alone, and for millions more across the globe, that daily ritual is a pill. A pill that keeps a virus suppressed. A pill that stands between them and a disease that 4 decades ago was a death sentence. And now researchers in London say that ritual might be about to change forever. This is the story of a study that just quietly rewrote what's possible for people living with HIV. And to understand why it matters, you first have to understand just how far we've already come. Let's rewind for a second. HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, emerged into public consciousness in the early 1980s as one of the most terrifying epidemics in modern history. In those early years, a diagnosis was catastrophic. There was no effective treatment. People watched their bodies waste away, their immune systems collapse, and their lives cut short, often within a few short years of diagnosis. It wasn't until the mid-1990s, with the arrival of what doctors called combination antiretroviral therapy, that things started to shift. Multiple drugs taken together could finally suppress the virus enough to keep people alive. But surviving and thriving are two different things. For years, managing HIV meant juggling handfuls of pills on strict schedules, often with brutal side effects. It wasn't until the 2000s and 2010s that treatment regimens got simpler, safer, and more tolerable. Eventually, for many patients, it came down to just one pill once a day. That was considered a medical miracle, a single tablet taken every morning capable of pushing the virus down to undetectable levels in the blood. And here's something a lot of people still don't fully grasp. When someone living with HIV is undetectable, meaning the virus is suppressed to the point where standard tests can't find it, they cannot transmit the virus to anyone else. Doctors call this undetectable equals untransmittable, or U equals U for short. It's one of the most important public health messages of the last 20 years, and it means that someone on effective treatment can expect to live a near normal lifespan. So if daily pills already work this well, why does any of this matter? Why are researchers spending years and millions of dollars trying to change something that already seems to be functioning? The answer comes down to something doctors call treatment fatigue, and it's more powerful and more human than you might expect. Imagine waking up every single morning of your life, and before you do anything else, you're confronted with a small reminder of a diagnosis you didn't choose, and for many, still carry stigma around. For some people, that daily pill isn't just medicine, it's a trigger. It's a moment of shame, of fear, of being outed to a partner or a roommate who might see the bottle on the nightstand. Over months and years, that daily reminder wears people down. And when people get tired, they start skipping doses. Missed doses can allow the virus to rebound, which isn't just dangerous for the individual, it also undermines the entire public health strategy built around keeping people undetectable. This is exactly the problem that researchers at Queen Mary University of London set out to solve. Their study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, set out to answer a deceptively simple question. What if patients didn't need to think about their HIV treatment every single day? What if they only had to think about it once a week? Here's how the trial worked. Scientists recruited just over 600 participants across 12 different countries. Every single one of them was already HIV positive, and every single one of them was already undetectable thanks to their existing daily medication. In other words, this wasn't a study about whether a new drug could suppress HIV from scratch. It was a study about whether people who were already stable and healthy could switch to something far less demanding without losing any of that hard-won progress. Half of the participants stayed on their normal daily pill. The other half switched to something new, a combination of two drugs called islatravir and lenacapavir, taken as a single pill just once a week. If those drug names sound unfamiliar, That's because they represent some of the newest thinking in HIV science. Lenacapavir works differently than most older HIV medications. Instead of targeting the virus in the same way traditional antiretrovirals do, it interferes with a protein shell, or capsid, that protects HIV's genetic material, disrupting the virus at multiple points in its life cycle. That's part of why it can remain effective in the body for much longer stretches of time, which is exactly what makes a once-weekly pill possible in the first place. Islatravir, meanwhile, blocks an enzyme the virus needs to replicate. Paired together, the two drugs were designed to do the same job as a daily regimen, just with far less frequent dosing. So, 48 weeks later, after nearly a year of tracking these 600 participants across 12 different countries, what did the researchers find? The results were striking in their simplicity. The number of participants who remained virally suppressed was the same in both groups. The people on the new once-weekly pill did just as well as the people who stuck with their daily regimen. No meaningful gap, no red flags. Just equally effective viral suppression with a fraction of the daily burden. Now, here's where the story takes an interesting turn, because this isn't actually the first time researchers have tried to make HIV treatment less frequent, and the history of that earlier attempt tells us a lot about why this new pill could matter so much. Back in 2021, the FDA approved long-acting injectable treatments for HIV. Instead of a daily pill, patients could receive an injection once every 2 months, administered by a healthcare provider. On paper, this sounded like exactly the kind of breakthrough that would solve the treatment fatigue problem. Surveys showed that a large share of people living with HIV said they wanted this option. They were tired of the daily pill. They wanted something less demanding. But then, something unexpected happened. Uptake stayed remarkably low. By 2023, only around 3% of people receiving HIV treatment had actually switched to the injectable option. And that number, according to the researchers behind this new study, is still estimated to be in the single digits today. Why would people say they wanted a less frequent treatment and then not switch when it became available? The reasons turn out to be complicated. Injections require a clinic visit every 2 months, which isn't always convenient, especially for people juggling work schedules, transportation issues, or clinics that are far from where they live. Some patients feel anxious about needles. Others worry about privacy, since a clinic visit can be a more visible event than quietly taking a pill at home. And for a treatment that requires ongoing buy-in from both patients and healthcare systems, even small barriers can keep adoption rates surprisingly low. This is exactly why the weekly pill approach is so compelling. It offers a middle ground. It cuts the daily burden dramatically from 365 doses a year down to just 52, without needing a trip to a clinic, a needle, or a shift in how or where someone manages their care. It's still a pill, something people are already comfortable and familiar with, just taken far less often.